Woman moves through the world blindly and tied up until released from the burdens of knowledge. It is a woman who assures a man of his spiritual completeness, and it is man who ensures woman can see freely. There is a great dichotomy between the sexes, and a great juxtaposition while also simultaneously a great conjunction. And that was an excerpt from my book, the Book of Oldishness. And one thing that I discuss quite a bit is the development process in regard to men and women, and how relating to the unconscious is in fact in many ways, just like relating to the opposite gender. And so the more that you can relate to the opposite gender, I genuinely think that the more you begin to realize that the platitude of "no one is coming to save us" is really quite true. And although I do not necessarily think that people ought to be preparing and having this catastrophe doomsday in mind, I do think that it's healthy to ensure that you're moving responsibly, but be responsible for who you are and what you're embodying. And I made this a while ago. I don't know if you can see it very super clearly, but this is the way that I see the transcendence of moving from the unconscious into spiritual rebirth or resurrection of the soul, so to speak. So at the very bottom, it's your basic relationship to the opposite gender. And then there's this spiritual alchemy that occurs in this metaphysical structure to get to the reincarnation of the soul, so to speak. You're spiritually reborn at this point. And what I think that the "no one is coming to save us" narrative is really trying to aim at is that it is up to us as individuals who are spiritually attuned to the novelty of the age that we are living in, and to move in accordance to that which is going to be best embodied for the present and the future. You see, there's so many things that are happening in the world that if we just stopped listening to these people, many of the problems that we would see would actually just resolve on their own, because we're not perceiving the problem anymore, because there was no problem to begin with. They manufactured it. The cultural engineers who are operating this construct that want you to be a part of the demiurge, they are siphoning your energy. They are literally taking your energy and extracting it. It is just like the Dark Crystal. If anybody's never seen the movie The Dark Crystal, essentially the little people who are slaves to these vulture-like creatures are staring into this dark crystal, and the dark crystal extracts their life force from, and their life essence from, these slaves, so that the vultures can stay young forever. And the vultures drink the life force. It's a very disturbing metaphor and image in a story, but it's an interesting narrative for how the ways in which the world really works. Because the thing is that there can be potential realities that correlate with other realities, but although that reality is just an illusion, because it's a reality, it's a elusive reality, because it can be very compelling to people who are caught up in the dogma or the ideology or whatever the case is. The people in that reality don't even see it as a reality. They see it as true, when in reality, in real time and true time, there is a difference. In real time, to them, they see it as truth. But in true time, it's not true at all. And so you have to determine who is exactly on true time and who exactly is on real time and who is exactly on fake time, because it's going to be very clear to me in the near future that I think the elites want us to believe that we are hopeless. And I don't even mean the elites as in they're this great, extravagant plan. I mean, maybe they are, but I kind of think of the elites as spiritual bums. And really, in reality, they are the materialist, hedonistic, seemingly affluent and gracious and all these things and charismatic. They're just from the dark side of the force, essentially. And it's like what Yoda says to Luke Skywalker. When Luke asks, is the dark side stronger? And Yoda says, no. Easier, more seductive, yes. But the good will always be more powerful. And why is that exactly? Why is it the case that virtue seems to be something that we have to learn? Why isn't it inherent in us? Or is it inherent in us? Were we born with a conscience? There's a lot of different ways in which you can perceive this. And depending on your data points, you're going to live in a certain type of reality. For example, the Christian will believe that we are born with a conscience, whereas the atheist might believe that we don't have a conscience and that there's just common sense, which I don't really take to either of these views, but I'm not really discarding them anyway, because you can totally see where they're coming from depending on their perspective. And it takes a recognition of your relationships to really fulfill the sense of understanding that you have within the system that we've got. And this system that we have is going to be entirely dependent upon your own perception of how you act and your attitude toward it. If you have a bleak and shameful and pain-filled and, I have to suffer attitude, well, then the construct of this reality is going to affirm this for you. And I genuinely have seen that happen so many times, especially with people I've done one-on-one sessions with, where they've told me that they prayed to Jesus and then something happened. Whereas with someone else, they seem to have the same amount of devout faith as this other person. And in fact, maybe they even have it more so, and they pray and they don't get what they are asking for. Well, what exactly is that? Well, it depends on your attitude toward the thing, and it depends on your true stance. It depends on because you can be truly standing in a place where you think it's real, but it's not actually true, because it is real. It's just like the dark side of the force, the light side of the force, so to speak. Good and bad, evil and good. These are real phenomenon, and this is a real thing. But if you operate from a place of timelessness, the labels cease to be. Power becomes neutral, and the force of life becomes neutral and of itself as well. I mean, there's a really significant impact that timelessness and operating from timelessness is going to have on your psyche. And there's this ascension process that is going to happen, and you have to be okay with the process. You have to recognize that this is always going to be a process. This is always going to be something that is continuing on. As long as we are in this physical plane, the physical plane is going to ever continue and recycle itself. Again, think about all the things that have been destroyed. Stonehenge. I've been doing research on Stonehenge recently, and I have very, very interesting data points that suggest that it's not nearly as old as we think it is. In fact, it was constructed to make it look like it's older than it is. Now, I'm not going to give those data points just right now, but this is a sense of reality. A lot of people are like, oh, Stonehenge, how did they do it? Oh, it's become this wonder of the world, so to speak, right? And it's very particular in how it's laid out and all these things. And I think that it's entirely possible that just as much as there was a reset in 2020, I think that the elites of the 1500s or the 1200s or whatever it was before then, they could have done many different types of resets. And there is evidence of this chronological data, but how verifiable is it? It is pretty verifiable, but I haven't been able to determine for sure that this is completely verifiable. And, maybe I just don't have all the data points just yet, or maybe it's not going to go anywhere. Who knows? But this is why I think that it's important that we recognize, again, this whole system, whatever you want to call it, the matrix, the whatever, it's all designed to influence your unconscious to denigrate itself. And so this is why step number one is to redevelop and rekindle your relationship with the opposite gender in a positive fashion. Because if you truly understand that no one's coming to save you, if you truly believe that, because I don't really like the saying, right? I don't really care for this platitude, because I think that if you follow it to its logical end, you're not going to really be able to trust anybody. But then again, it's like, well, can you trust anybody though? In my experience, I think that you can trust people for sure, but the amount of people that are worthy to be trusted, very, 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 very slim. Very slim. And I'd like to think that most people are generally good, but the problem is that even just saying that is just, I want to believe that, but I don't need to believe anything anymore. I don't need to have faith in anything anymore. I can just verify something. And why believe or have faith in something if I can just know it? Something either is or it's not. And it's really that simple. A lot of people don't think it's that black and white, but maybe it is that black and white. And perhaps that's one of the reasons why so many people are misguided, is because they want to believe it's not as black and white as it really is. And when I say that, I don't even mean that it's just limited in color. I mean that there's lightness and there's darkness. That's really all that it is. And I think that so many people are so set in their ways, they're not recognizing that they're in competition for their own attention, and they're competing against themselves. And I think that that's one of the most dangerous things about this platitude of no one's coming to save us. And the reason being is because you start to sabotage yourself. And I think a lot of religious people sabotage themselves. I think a lot of Christians specifically, they believe that the world is way worse on them than it really has to be. And the more that they try to be like the martyr, they try to emulate the martyr, the more that they get martyred. And they're like, oh, this confirms my faith. And it's like, well, yeah, no duh, because that's what you're putting out into the world. You're proclaiming virtue. Like, I can't tell you how many Christians I have seen in the last 5 to 10 years where they proclaim virtue and they seem like they're very righteous people, and they show compassion and all these things, and yet you realize at the end of the day it's all a show. It's all fake. They never believed it anyway. And so I don't even believe a lot of these people. I don't believe anything. I don't believe or have faith in anything. And I'm not saying that nihilistically. I'm saying that as in the sense of sometimes you're not going to know what's going to happen until you just move. Like, I don't truly know that when I go walk outside that the earth is going to sink beneath me and, cradle me and hold me and all of these weird things, right? I don't really know, but I've experienced walking outside enough times to verify that, like, all right, I'm going to be walking. It's like the whole, people want to get David Hume on people. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with David Hume, but I think his first name's David, isn't it, David? All I know, Hume is a philosopher, and he wants to, anybody who wants to play Hume is like, oh, well, do you really know that the car ignition is going to start if you turn the key? It's like, well, of course not. Of course you don't really know, but you've done it enough times to where you can basically just verify that this is a repeatable pattern. It's no longer a singularity thing. It's a repeatable pattern through time. And this is one of the things that I think that you have to have some nuance and give yourself some grace and let grace be given unto you, because that's what the book of Ephesians talks a lot about as well, is that, the grace is a gift and it's bestowed upon you. Grace is a gift. It reminds me very much of what Osho says, and Osho's a sage. And, well, I guess, I don't know if you could technically title or name him, but he's a very interesting character. We'll put it like that. And something that he said is, he said, in regard to that, life is a gift. It's not a sin. And you know what? I totally see what he means now, because sin only exists because you think it exists. You only believe in sin because you believe in sin. If you never knew about sin, you'd know that there are things that make you worse off and things that don't, but you'd never know about the name sin or the word sin. It's like if nobody ever heard of the word supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, nobody would know about that word. If I didn't come up with the book of Oldishness, I've never heard the term Oldishness before. That's why I created this to be the way that it is, because I thought it was appropriate considering the content and the context of the book itself and what I'm writing about in it. There's this sense of novelty with it. And it's because it's kind of old. It's kind of oldish, but there's like a quality of the old to it that gives birth from the archaic into the new. And this is what many people, I think, that they get so caught up in trying to conceptualize certain things that, and I'm guilty of this, guilty right here. I'm very much so guilty of it. And this is one of the things that I've been working through myself over the past couple months. And the Regal Change old timers will know that I've taken a shift. I'm not a different, well, I am kind of a different person, I suppose, even from just 5 minutes ago, but I'm just shifting in who I am and what I am. I don't really believe in personalities anymore. I don't think that you can have a set personality. I think that you can have cognitive functions that you prefer, but it only prefers that because that's the way that the archetypes within you want to express themselves. I don't think personality is really a thing. I think personality is an ego thing, and it's not to say that you shouldn't have an ego, because having a healthy ego is very good and healthy for you, but because it helps protect you from unreasonableness from people and narcissists and psychopaths and sociopaths, etc. But for the most part, there's a lot of tricks that the ego can play on you, and the mind wants things to be simple and direct. And I've even had people tell me that I don't even think that I'm coming across in a poetic way, but people are telling me, like, you're speaking way too poetically and riddlesome. And it's like, well, if you have eyes to hear and ears to see, wouldn't you be able to discern what I'm saying? Because I don't think I'm causing confusion at all. In fact, I see things more clearly than ever before. And it seems obvious now. It seems obvious that if you look at the platitude, for example, of no one's coming to save us or no one's coming to save you or me, no one really exists. And that's well, you can say no one, the person no one, or the thing no one truly exists. And then you can say no one exists, as in there is no one. There is just the one. There is no one. There is one. And I think that this is where people maybe take me to be poetic or riddlesome, I suppose, but it seems very clear and obvious to me. It seems very direct and straightforward. I would be interested to know other people's perspectives on this, but, generally speaking, overall, I don't see how if you have new access to data points that reveal certain truths to you about your own experience, in which are going to alleviate any potential concepts that are causing you unnecessary suffering, wouldn't you want to know about those things? Or are you so encapsulated in your masochism because you want to hurt yourself through suffering, because you believe that because the world isn't the way that I want it to be and I have to suffer for it? Like, what exactly does that mean? Like, what does it mean to suffer? I've thought about this a lot recently. And the reason being is because I've had it seem to be a pattern convergence signal that's come up in my relationships as well as in the Regal Change Academy. And shout out to the guy watching. He knows who I'm talking about. And yeah, I mean, I thought about this and I respectfully disagreed with the perspective, although I could totally see his point. It's just that now I have different data points that I'm looking at that are no longer verifying that that's the case. And this is not like a oh, I'm right or he's wrong. It's not like that at all. It's just, I don't see right and wrong really to be anything. Like, morals are what we make them to be. And I totally see what Friedrich Nietzsche said when he says that we create our own values. And I don't necessarily think that it's not the case that we're not born with a conscience per se, but it's also not the case that virtue has to be learned inherently and strictly inherently. And that's a very difficult line to draw, because it's like, well, then what exactly is virtue? Then what exactly is morality? And how do we navigate this terrain? What exactly is ethics then? Well, this is where Aristotle is very respectable from my perspective, because Aristotle never objected to Plato or Socrates. He never really objected them. He just refined what they said. And I think that that's what every good disciple does, is they refine what's already been done. And that's the whole point, even for yourself, right? This is not a competition. The world is a competition, but it's not really a competition. The biggest competition you'll ever have is against the devil inside you. And it's only there because you think it's there. When in reality, one exists, not no one. It's one. But you're connected to everything and yet detached from all things. And this is where, the potential for truly being in something that is everlasting and really going to change your viewpoint of life forever. That's where it happens, when you no longer see the competition as an enemy. You see it as a dance. And so, with all that being said, I hope that this message was useful and insightful for you. For all of those with the financial and time resources, feel free to check out the Godlike Mastery offer that I have, and you can make an application there, and as well as the one-on-one sessions that I have, you can apply there as well on my website. Or I now do the 7-day free trial for the Regal Change Academy, and the links are all going to be in the description box below, or you can check it out on the website that I have if you're watching this from X. So, peace. Until next time.